Hey guys, I'm Sage Valentine, and this is another review of CBS's Survivor, Season 32, Episode number 10, Kaoh Rong, Brains versus Beauty versus Brawn, Part 2. So, there's so much to talk about in this episode, but I have to say that my favorite part was watching Scott extinguish his torch and walk away, because this dude has felt untouchable since day one. And I am so proud of Ty, and I hope that Ty wins this game. I want him to win so bad because he has been a very shrewd and awesome player. That isn't to say that there aren't other players that are playing the hell out of this game, but that move that Ty made to jump to the girls' side, to me, was a very smart move, because Ty didn't agree with what those boys were doing. Basically, the guys showed Ty that he was at the bottom of the barrel. They dictated everything. They never really asked for his input. And when he came up with the idea of reuniting the two sides of the tribe, the boys just kind of poo-pooed him away. They really didn't want to hear it. And Aubrey and the girls basically were able to seduce him over to the girls' side. I'm going to have to use the word seduce. But anyway, Ty just seemed a lot closer to the girls anyway. And on a side note, I believe that if Caleb was a part of that alliance, Ty would have stayed longer. But now Ty's basically on his own, so he figured he'd go back to the girls because those two guys weren't thinking about him at all. So at first it seemed like Sydney was going to go home. But as I've been saying, but I'll repeat it in case you guys haven't heard it on my other reviews, I pay no attention to any of the edits on any of these episodes. I just wait till Tribal Council, because sometimes when you think somebody's going home, they're not going home, because it seemed like Sydney might go home. Then it seemed like Ty was in danger. Then it seemed like Aubrey was in danger. But the one constant thing that they kept showing in this episode had to be Scott tooting his own horn, Scott believing that he was in power. Because I did not understand his vendetta against the women. I haven't been too keen on him and Jason since they were completely after Alicia. And then Scott had this vendetta against Sydney, and I mean, I tried my best in my last review to explain it, but I still don't understand why. And then while watching tonight's episode, it dawned on me. I'm going to read this from my notes. Scott was upset because Sydney, in his eyes, betrayed them for no reason. He called her petty, small, and brooding during this episode, despite the fact that he was obviously talking about himself. I love it when people are talking about other people and they just kind of deflect onto another person the negative attributes about themselves. So I came up with this whole hypothesis that Sydney flipped because the guys felt threatened by her relationship with the girls. If you remember, she was just chilling with the girls. There was really no talk of an alliance, and then all of a sudden the guys were acting kind of shady, so she left, and I don't blame her. But then again, don't forget that Scott and Jason joined up with, I believe it was Nick, and had this little alliance, and were trying to leave Sydney out of it. So I'm glad that she did leave, because they were going to get rid of her, or tried to. Anyway, I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. One of my viewers on this channel basically clued me into the fact that he saw a picture of Jason being, I guess, crowned with the immunity idol necklace. So I knew that Jason won immunity, but I was hoping that it wasn't true, but it turned out obviously to be true. And I started to realize another thing while watching this episode, that the guy's little tower of power would fall the moment that Ty flipped, because despite the fact that those two guys have immunity idols, they still needed Ty, because Ty could help them with this super idol thing. So when Ty flipped, that basically cut one of the heads off the beast. And I thought it was pretty funny when Scott said during this episode, I know I'm jumping around, but that if he's basically happy and they vote out Sydney, then everything in camp would go back to normal. In other words, this dude is acting like either give me what I want or I'm going to cause more turmoil. And that's another reason why Aubrey was like, we got to get this dude out. And personally, I don't blame her at all. Now, during the reward challenge, Julia won love letters, Michelle won food, and I was jealous of her with that food. And Ty won the advantage. And I'm so happy that Ty kept that advantage to himself and did not tell those boys, because Ty has an extra vote. So if he wants to get somebody out, just add that extra vote to it. And I don't know, honestly, after, let's see, Scott left, once Jason uses his idol, unless of course he finds another idol or he wins immunity again, he's basically a sitting duck. Unless of course the girls can convince him that he's safe and that they're going after Julia. If they can do that, that will be a hell of a feat. A hell of a feat. The one thing that annoyed me about Julia in this episode was, and this is a part of my notes, she basically told us that it was her goal to win. She wants to flush out all of the idols and then Sydney would go home. Now, this is what she was telling Michelle and Aubrey. And I'm looking at Julia like, I understand this is a game and everything, but out of all the people in the game, why does Sydney have to be the pawn? I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Sydney, but I'm saying, like, it seemed like during this episode, in some of the scenarios, it just kept coming down to Sydney. Right then, I should have known that Sydney wasn't going home because her name kept popping up a little bit too much. And I also should have known that Ty was going to flip because Ty and Aubrey seemed pretty cool. So, again, I'm happy that Ty flipped because he definitely helped himself and definitely made a gigantic move in this game. Julia may be the next casualty of war in this game because of the fact that the girls are aware of how, as Aubrey says, duplicitous she is. And I'm glad that Aubrey told Ty that Julia was trying to rally up the girls to backdoor him. That's probably why he also jumped ship from that alliance. And again, I don't blame him for doing that. All of a sudden, Scott decides he no longer wants to get rid of Sydney. Now he wants to get rid of Aubrey, I guess because Ty was talking to Scott and Ty told him how Aubrey wanted to work with the guys if she could, and Scott all of a sudden had this vendetta against Aubrey. What is this, like the third or fourth or fifth female in this game that he has had a vendetta against? And I was wondering, like, why all of a sudden do they want to keep Sydney? Like, what's going on that we're not seeing? And then it dawned on me, and this is just me saying this on a side note, I bet you Sydney and Jason have some sort of secret alliance. And you guys probably think I am the craziest person in the world, probably because I watch not only CBS's Survivor, but CBS's Big Brother, but I wouldn't put it past them to have some type of alliance because it's just so funny how Sydney's name popped up as the next person to go, and then all of a sudden, Scott decides he wants Aubrey out. I'm just saying. And as I said, Jason won immunity. The boys felt so unstoppable, on top of the world. Like, to be honest, Scott didn't even try hard to get that immunity necklace, and I really think he could have stood up there a lot longer. But then again, Julia didn't try either, but maybe that's me. Maybe I'm the only person that noticed that one. It seemed at first that Aubrey was going home. When Jason and Scott were basically talking about how they were relying on the super idol, I should have known that it was not going to get used. Julia runs to the boys and basically tells the boys that the girls made this plan to backdoor Ty. So the boys, basically Jason and Scott, tell her, oh, okay, well, the three of us could be final three. However, they never told her about the idea of backdooring Aubrey, and they never told her about the super idol. So that's why I believe, again, that Julia is going to be the next casualty of war, because she is not 100% in the loop on either side. And she feels like she is, but she isn't, obviously. I think that move to backdoor Scott was brilliant, but I would be lying if I told you that I was not nervous about it, especially when Ty was just kind of like, I don't know, I'm not sure when he was talking to us. Should I listen to my brain? Should I listen to my heart? I'm like, Ty, think of yourself in this game. And like he said, he wasn't there to make friends. I should have known right then that he was going to jump ship from the boys. And I thought it was pretty cool how Aubrey gathered the troops, Sydney, Ty, and Joe, and told them, we're all going to vote for Scott. Michelle thought that they were still voting for Ty. Julia thought that they were still voting for Ty, and the two boys thought that they could backdoor Aubrey and basically get away with it. And they felt like they were safe because of the whole Super Idol thing. So we made it through the tribal council, which seemed so tense, and Scott still sat there with Jason and Ty and felt like he was safe. He felt so safe, and I'm just like, Scott, if you go home tonight, that's your own fault. And when it came down to the votes were basically 4 for Scott, which, as I said, it was Joe, Sydney, Aubrey, and Ty that voted for Scott. Julia and Michelle voted for Ty, and Scott and Jason voted for Aubrey. But the final couple minutes were so tense. I mean, after everything was read, and Jeff Probst was just like, okay, Scott, it's time to go. And Scott was looking to Jason, and Jason was kind of looking to him, basically telling him, like, ask Ty. And Scott looked to Ty, like, are you going to give me your idol? And Ty looked at him like, you're in trouble. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't believe this. And Scott went home, and I'm super happy. I don't know who's going to win. I just hope that Ty makes it to the final 3 because he is an excellent player. And at this point, I don't care who wins. As long as it's not Jason or Julia, I'm good with that. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this review. Don't forget to rate this video and leave me your comments. Let me know what you thought about this episode and the season so far. And who are you rooting for? And who do you think will be the next person to go? I'm so late for Empire and watching Empire, but I had to do this review because I just love this episode. But I'll be back again next week to review episode 11 because we're getting so close to finale night, and I can't wait to see that. I know that's going to be very eventful, but I love you guys. Bye, guys. Bye.